Our researcher assistant drove out to the manor house of one of the last of the great American plantations and asked the colonel for a statement on a recent Supreme Court decision in the field of education. Actually, the original question was never answered, but the assistant on the job was running out of tape and didn't like to ask again. The first thing to understand is that nobody, not a person you can find, has a single, solitary thing against people from the South themselves in their place, which is a place made of them by nature and lived harmoniously for generations. They know their place, and they like their place, and they don't get confused and stirred all up about when so-called reformers try to move them out of their place and even try to tear down their own place with places. But in their place, you couldn't ask for sweeter people than the others. Gentle folks who know very well who it is that really has their interest in heart. And musical. Well, every one of them can sing. Every one of them has got a voice. But take them out of their place, or confuse them, and get them all stirred up so they leave their place themselves, and they turn into rapping, rioting, razoring rascals that you just don't want your children to go to school with. They take to gin, they take to cocaine, they play hot jazz till the cows come home, they wear yellow shoes, and they buy Cadillacs on easy payments, which are never quite easy enough. Some of them give themselves airs and become Mohima, Manding, Dan, Walla Walla Bing Bangs, though there's nothing wrong with Walla Walla Bing Bangs in their place. Well, some of them wantonly throw away their any airs that they had and play cool jazz, which is of course then worse than hot jazz. Well, hot or cool, you just can't get a field hand in a chorus of Mosley through the gloaming towards the big house, raising their gentle voices in the strains of, where's those pancakes? Anyway, nobody plucks out the old banjo, and Stephen Foster's dead. He died, by the way, in drink and despair, brought on by thoughts of things to come. Where did he die? In the North, of course. He died in New York. A well-known town up there. To lift a gentle darkly from the fields where the order of the rose and hose and mirrors of miners and profound orders society that grows from corn, and to pluck them down defenselessly in the jungles of Bedlam or Newport, Rhode Island, is clearly the work of deminds they are. They so-called reformers who sweep down like crows upon corn and any older porn and mellower ways of life. Roses from the South. Oh, a few home truths lend themselves to clarifying the shameful story of the deminded and Dixie. One is simple, that the flower of the Southland, and always has been, of Scotch or Scot-Irish extraction, that being so it might highly significant, that being so it becomes highly significant that in the great days of demindology along the 7th century Scots, the king of the deminds was always known as the black man. A further demindological investigation conducted by, among all the others, good King James, himself a loyal Scot who, like so many others, went to the south, invariably disclosed that the Ackman or the Acumen was actually a blight man who assumed the ebon hue, better washed and better to ruin the soul. Now in the demindistic invasion of the South by reformers, we see actually the same thing. The leaders and the instigators of these unsettled movements are not other people, but the blight people who put on the ebon hue of pretend interest in others' lots than the better to ruin souls. Many observers find it far from inconceivable that some of those other-faced reformers and blight senses also, when it serves their purpose, put on the variant burnt cork to lead their people to places they don't really want to go, such as lunch counters and bathing beaches and on the front of the bus. The demons began their work long ago. It was well advanced and solidly entrenched, and it may be beyond the correction now without resort to violence. Distressing is all that would be to all. They began, those deminded, by giving bad names to bravery. So successful did they accomplish this that today it is all but impossible to discuss the subject rationally with those apostles of tolerance and free speech who wrought such troubles for the simple heart. Still, the effort must be made, and indentured servitude began. Well, let us begin with the state of the world today. Everybody agrees it's a bad shape, and the working majority of the observers agree that a lot of our troubles come from the fact that we are machine civilization. Everywhere you turn, you see the blank faces of the machine getting ready to take over. Automobiles run you down. Trains are never on time. Washing machines fall apart and refuse to wash clothes. Well, in the factories of the North. Things are so bad they got machines to tend machines and other machines to keep the score and reckoning the cost. All this machine mania of ours, from which 9/10 of our troubles come, is a frenzied search, doomed in the end of frustration for an artificial man-made substitute for nature's way of bravery. It's no longer possible to appeal to man's natural veneration for customs and antiquity, and to point out that bravery is an ancient institution never condemned by any of the world's great religions until fashionable preachers learned to tell their congregation that they wanted that to be heard. For in today's mad quest for novelty, the very age of instruction is given as best of reaction for its speedy destruction. It is no longer possible to appeal to the scriptures and itself in indentured servitude of comforting the story of how the other races began in the spin of one sin to the sons of Noah. For all the treasury of human experience and divine wisdom is dismissed nowadays as a fundamental superstition. But we may be allowed to point to an ideal age that all accept the golden age of Greece, where all those high-minded pagans strolled into the green fields and lolled in the marketplace, building the epic dramas and lyrics, the philosophy and the way of life that has been since the standard against which man measures his own achievements. It was a lovely age, an age of genius, an age of gracious living, and it was based entirely on the classical institution of what other than bravery? Without bravery, the whole crew, from Homer's Euripides, well, they would just not gotten off the couch and get a job. Well, there you would have had been so wildly and the wily Odysseus at the gates of Troy. He would have been back on the farm, working like a Trojan. Those Greeks, well, they would have no more Elgin marbles and then the Elgin watches. The only thing that the D-minded took from our common Greek heritage was the regrettable preoccupation with lex that some find in all the plays and statuaries. Consequently, the D-minded have spread it about that resistance to reform is rooted in rut, and that those who wish to keep their institutions pure are moved by the morbid fear of the actuality or the actuality of relations between races. The whole history of the South, even as that history is simplified in novels that are the countries of the Odysseys of Orestia, give it the lie to this Conard. The Southern gentleman has never fully denied the pleasure of his company to anyone who sought it, and even to some who don't seek it. Race has been no bar to the evening's entertainment. That same gentleman, naturally, would rightly point out that though one brings a well-loved dog into the drawing room to lie before the fire, one does not go, therefore, oneself to live in the kennel. And that's all the truth there is behind the supposed fear of the mongrelization said to guard the purity of the ballot box. The D-minded are at work in Dixie, and they have powerful allies, but in the end they cannot win. In the end will triumph customs and comforts and all the right reasons with the solitary knock on the door at midnight. The D-minded's purpose, with their usual fallacies, one solution after another for those that lived and that they are making their own makings, but their solutions, a concession here, a compromise there, a date for compliance, and deliberate speed are vain and valueless. The end of aggregation is no solution to aggregation, to anything, nor, for that matter, it is the continuance of the aggregation. The only solution is the assumption by the responsible elements in the community decision-making roles required for the welfare of all get eggs in their face. In a word, the return to bravery, and the sooner the better.